we'll go ahead and jump in here. I'd like to introduce a very amazing, special person for me. This is my wife, Stephanie. So,
hello.
You want to say some things since you're new to the class?
Hi. We have the same children, and
We do.
This is my husband, and we've been married for 15 years. Did you talk about the kids? I don't know what.
I mean, briefly.
Oh, yeah, he talked about it.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got 4 of them, and so we're kind of spread across, anywhere from 5 to 13 at this point. And so I think we, for a long time, have had the privilege of watching some people parent really well. And not just our parents. I love all of our parents, but not just our own parents. And there are things that we've tried to pick and choose and take from people that we can use.
That's what a lot of this is.
Yeah, and then one thing that I was going to say that I didn't talk to you about, but I was going to say it anyway, was, whenever I send people to some sort of education, I'm a physician. So when I refer people to nutrition, I always tell people, you're going to go in there, and this is someone who really, really likes their job a lot and has all the information in the world, and it's going to feel like a fire hydrant just throwing a whole bunch of information at you. So when you're in a class like this, if we had an entire weekend where it was we're going to talk about this one topic, and then you're going to have 4 hours to talk to each other and process and pray, and then we'll come back and we'll pick another topic and we'll spend 4 hours process, that would be wonderful. That's not what a class like this is. A class like this is going to be like the fire hydrant of information. And so keep track of those things that you're just that's good. I need to go revisit that. We need to go talk about that. How do I need to implement this? Use this as kind of that overview. And then if there's something you want to dig into, there will be some time for some of that. There are also things that you're oh, that doesn't really apply to me at all right now, but it may trigger something in a couple of years. Take the things as we're parenting. It's fixing the car while you're driving it. And so it is. It's one of those things that it's when you can take something and implement it. If it's 1 or 2 things from this class, that's great, right? And if you take 2 things and implement things that kind of change the trajectory in a little bit, in 6 months, you'll be closer to the target that you're trying to get to. So that's all.
Stephanie, everyone. So, anyways, let's jump in. Let me pray for us so we can kind of get started the right way here. Lord, we love you so much, and we're thankful for this journey that we're on as parents, that we're learning and growing and making mistakes and getting back up again and trying again to do better and be better as parents and as disciplers and as So, Lord, walk with us. Holy Spirit, teach us. Give us revelation. Give us enlightenment. Let us see new ways of thinking of things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So let me go ahead and close the door. Otherwise, we're going to hear the Disney movie up the hall. Okay. So week 2. So before we jump into the content for tonight, anybody have any thoughts or questions from last week? Anybody work on any of the exercises we talked about, the vision statements or priorities, core values that you want to share before we jump in?
I tried the family meeting.
Okay. How'd it go?
On Sunday. I think I picked one of the things. It was maybe how it was going to home. I did that with all 3 of them. And my oldest rolled her eyes at me. She's like, oh.
Yeah.
Do I have to talk to you?
Which is fair.
But I made him do it.
Yeah.
And I said, we'll start here. And they all did it, though. And I actually got some good information that I don't think I would have known otherwise.
Cool. The first few times is like pulling teeth. The first, it's like going on a first date, right? It's like the first few days, well, this is kind of awkward, and then, or like a new small group. Well, we're all sitting in our living room.
Well, and it's different
Who's gonna
because if
share
you have
first?
the older one's going to be the one that's it's going to be pulling teeth at first, but then it's if you start them when they're younger, then the younger one to them, this is just what we do, So when it's fixing the car while you're driving it when they're a little older, and you're we need to start doing this, and then the older one goes, oh.
We have to. Well, I told you all last week about there was a couple months ago we were having a very very high intensity weekend. stressful. And Sunday about 5 or 6 o'clock rolls around, and the kids are on the couch waiting. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? Oh, and they're like, Dad. I'm like, oh, it's meeting time. Okay,
it's time.
Great. And our older ones were definitely the like, at first too. And now they're the ones like whipping out their calendar going, okay, what's on the week this week? You know, they're.
Or I want to add this to Tuesday. So on Tuesday, can
like,
we go do this? And
Can't
it's
just
like,
add.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. Any questions about last week? Any conversations that come out of this from? We'll get y'all talking eventually, I promise. So we're gonna have some talking tonight. Don't worry. So tonight we're gonna jump into parenting as stewardship. So anybody heard the word stewardship before? Right? I'm sure many of us have. But the definition of stewardship kind of breaks down to having responsibility for something that belongs to something else, something that belongs to someone else. So the idea of our kids, they don't belong to us, right? They're the Lord's. We are stewarding them through this journey. Having responsibility, having, I mean, in some ways control, in some ways not control. It's not ownership, right? But it's responsibility. We are their caretakers. We are their stewards for the time that we have. And they're born as blank slates. And we had a lot of fun talking about this. Like when you have your first kid, anybody only have one kid in here? One? Cool.
Hey.
I remember that. When you have your first kid, your natural inclination is to be the controlling force, like to shelter and control and steer every little thing. At least it was for us, right? We're both firstborns, and so when we had our first kiddo, we were a family of firstborns for a while. Those were some intense fights. It was great. It's your natural instinct to want to be the controlling force in everything, especially when you've experienced pain or suffering as a result of things that you've had to walk through. Like something my dad would tell me all the time. I just want to keep you from walking the same or having the same trouble I did when I was your age. It's like, well, that's great, and I'm not knocking my dad. Your parents love you the best way they know how, right? They raise you the best way they know how, and when you have your first one, your gut instinct is to shelter and protect. Like, no, don't be exposed to anything. But it's not our job to shelter and prevent our children from being exposed to hard things. Rather, I'd like to put it before you guys that it's our job as parents to help them process through when they're exposed to hard things. Because, come on in. They will be exposed to hard things, right? It's not a matter of if. I hate to say it, but it's when. Difficult ideas, painful experiences, hard choices, etc. And we get to give them the tools to use as they grow and become independent. By being present and being a safe place first. Like we talked about last week, 90% of this, like spoiler alert, 90% of parenting is just being present. And so as you age and as you gain experience, you learn that our role is way more to help shape and facilitate rather than control. The analogy you used when we were talking about this is like the bumpers in the bowling alley, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the kids hit against both bumpers, right? That's really what we become as they get older. We become the bumpers. Like, oh, too far, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, and it's a lot of, I think, the intentionality of taking into account, okay, you're going to go walk into this situation. How can I best prepare you to make good choices? And when you don't make good choices, how do we correct that, right? And so the majority of things, and when we sit down and talk about this thing, I always get teary because my kids are the best and I love them. And I think we all try to do our best with what we have. And I look back to when we just had the 1 and the 2, and it's like, I wish that I could have just enjoyed it a little more. Wish that I could have just let some things happen and then not tried to prevent so much. You know what I mean?
On a funnier note, that like the birth order Instagram joke reels, right? It's true as a parent. Like your first kid's like, oh, they're wrapped in bubble wrap all the time. But the fourth kid is like, nah, that was on the floor for an hour. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah. It's true.
That's real. It's maybe not quite that extreme, but it's real.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the things, we all have phones. Okay, Proverbs 22, verse 6. Does anyone know it? You all know it if we start saying it. Ready? Raise up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. So this is one of my dad's big soapboxes. So Dad, thank you. This is his big thing, is when you actually take what that verse means, is it means that you raise a child according to their bent. You raise a child according to the way that they are wired, not the way that you prefer, not the way that you like to do things, not the way that your family has always done things sometimes.
Amen to that.
The way that they should go is the way also that the Lord has created them. So it's their desires, it's their passions, it's their gifts, it's the things they're good at, it's the things that make them who they are, their personality. Do they like people or do they not like people? Like, what are the things that make them who they are? And understanding that you were chosen as that child's steward for a reason. There are times in life with our kids that are hard, that they make decisions that we don't understand because they're different than we are, because life is different now than it was. Or they are the same that we are. And those are sometimes even harder sometimes. And it's one of those things where sometimes the discipline that we have set up to work for this kid doesn't do a thing for this one over here. Right? So it's figuring out the things that speak to each heart. And part of that is just being open and available and being present and getting to know your kid.
If we say that over and over again about being present, it's because we really mean it. Mm-hmm. Like being present, it's hard, especially in a day where this is way easier just to, be present by not being present. But to actually be present, meaning like leaning in the moment, It's hard, especially sometimes if you've been overstimulated all day, right? But those are the things that your kids will take away and remember, is you being present.
So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is figuring out how your kid connects best. So, and there are different seasons of life, and that also changes how they connect, right? So one of mine does really well on just likes going to the store with me and drives, and if I can just be with you, great, and we can just chit chat as we're going along the things. Got another one that it's it has to be pretty intentional. We're
gonna go stargazing.
We're gonna go, let's sit down and have spa time. And we're just gonna but it has to be low key. We're not here to talk about anything in particular. We're just here to hang out. And then as we just hang out, the conversations come out. The questions about, hey, this happened at school the other day. And I can ask the questions of, how is school? How is this going? What about this friend? Creating those spaces that each kid will connect differently.
One of them would prefer to sit there over Legos and do Legos all day, and then
which melts my brain. But
Legos.
Okay, we're gonna do it. So, one of the other things that we have. This is on the handout, right? Okay, so this is Erickson stages. This is just something that I'm throwing out as a resource. It is psychological stages. You learn this, if you took Psychology 101 college or something like that. We kind of always refer back to this when we're having our intentional parenting conversations of okay, what do we want this next year to look like? What do we want this next semester at school to look like? Those sorts of things. Or if we're really struggling with one of them for some reason, we will sometimes go back to this and say, okay, if we're supposed to be in this initiative versus guilt situation, how do we create situations where we're encouraging the initiative and we're minimizing the guilt? Is there a place where we have found that we've gone down this negative road, and how do we just kind of redirect that and pull this way?
Welcome.
You made it.
You're fine.
You're
I'll give you a handout. Of course.
Do we want to go through them?
Sure. Yeah, let's go through them real fast. I think it's good. So again, this is not like a super rigid thing, but this almost gives you context to what your child is perceiving and taking away from each stage, right? So the very basic one of infancy is trust versus mistrust, right? When they're babies, they're learning, can I trust or do I have to be on the defensive? with almost everything you do.
Right.
Are you safe or am I not safe? Right?
If you say you're going to do this,
Oh, you better do it.
are you going to do it? Right? Like, or are you the person that, well, you say you're going to do this thing, 50-50 shot? Because they also are learning you and then how they're going to react with the world in that stage of life.
And just, if you want more details about this, that QR code on your handout, you can scan that and that'll actually take you to this great in-depth, it's not super clinical, but it's a great walkthrough of these stages.
Yep. So then stage 2, you have autonomy versus shame and doubt. So this is like, can I go make decisions on my own? Am I able, that's when they start telling you no a lot of times. That's where you start getting the
Anybody have an 18-month to 3-year-old? How's that no going right now?
Oh, you got 2 of them. That's so fun.
How is no? Isn't that great?
No.
No.
No. It's not good. And then you've got initiative versus guilt. This is preschool. This is where the 3 to 5 year old, they talk about potty
What
training.
was your first phrase as a child, honey?
I do it myself. That was
3 to 5 year old. That sums it up right there.
That was, yeah. And so then the initiative versus guilt, it's also, can I do these things on my own? And then having that purpose behind it. You've got industry versus inferiority. Am I able to be a productive member of my cohort, 5 to 12 years old,
Am I
right?
competent? Can I actually
do this? Right? And then versus inferiority. I mean, you think about a 10-year-old and you think about a group of 10-year-olds, what are the things you're going to start seeing? You're going to see those kids who are the super industrious ones, and then you see the ones that don't feel like they can. And then 12 to 18, we have identity versus confusion.
And the thing about these, if you look back on your own life, you can see these things echoed at these stages.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, think about it. Look back real quick to this industry versus inferiority in stage 4. That's 6th grade, 5th and 6th grade. That's a hard age for almost every child because do I fit in? Do I belong? Right? Am I capable of actually doing things or not? And that's that they're learning who they are and how they work. And that's anyways.
So as a tool in your tool belt, this is something you can pull out. And if you're like, okay, we're really struggling to get through to this one. Okay, let's go back. Stage 1, trust versus mistrust. Do they trust me? Have I shown them that I am trustworthy? And then how do we make sure that that's intact? Okay, stage 2. And you kind of evaluate through that. Where are we in this? Because you can have all of these things intact, and then all of a sudden something happens at school, and someone tells them that their head is too small, which is what one of them was told the other day at school. I don't know. That literally happened. And so it was
really?
They told me my head was too small. It's not. Okay, cool.
You're a doctor, you'd know.
Done, it's fine. But when those things happen, then sometimes you have to go back and rebuild on some of these stages that were already intact, right? We're all human. We all have that. And we make mistakes. We don't realize that it's period observation at ballet, and we have to make an apology because we missed that one. So making sure that we continue to build that trust intentionally, especially when it's broken. Those sorts of things as you go through these stages. So this is just something you can pull out. I think that's good to refer back to.
Even in your own life, as you look ahead, 18 to 40-year-old people and then 40-plus people, there are some good things for you to keep in mind for your own
full life
growth.
Stages for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and again, a lot of times your children will walk through change according to the age breakdowns in this chart, right? A lot of times. So if you'll see your relationship with your children change as they go from 5 to 6 years old, right? Or as they go from 12 to 13 years old, right? And which is where our current stage is. We haven't gone to, 16 to 18 yet. We're not there yet. But if you look back, you can kind of see, or if you don't have kids who are older, as they get older, you'll notice that as they cross those almost like mini generations, right? Their developmental stages, your relationship will change with them. And that's where you get the if you're not careful, you wake up trying to relate to your 12-year-old as though they're still 3. It's well, you're not my little girl anymore. You haven't been my little girl in 6 years. Okay, so how do I reach you all of a sudden, right? And through being present in relationship, you'll see those changes happening, and you'll be able to adapt as it's going on, rather than reacting. You'll be able to adapt.
Sometimes it's hard though.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard on the parent because I know probably when Javen was like 11, I was like, well, who's your best friend? His answer has always been, you, Mommy. And he told me some kid's name at school, and I was like,
Wait a minute.
What?
When did that happen?
Go back. That's me.
Yeah.
You know, and it shouldn't have. That hurt my heart. You know, that I'm not his best friend anymore.
Yep.
You know, so you have to watch them change. You know, and everything about them is starting to change with them. And it's hard.
Yeah, I get real nostalgic about that.
And it's
Personally.
the letting go that you're talking about. And that's when we started talking about, like, what are we going to talk and parenting as stewardship, which is that you're not mine. You know what I mean? Like, I get you here. I get to hold you really close for a couple years. And then you don't want me to do that anymore. And that's that stewardship is that process of letting go and creating the autonomy and creating the space for other best friends, which doesn't feel very good all the time, but making sure that we allow that space for growth for them, which is probably the hardest part, honestly, in my mind.
They're going to grow and mature into these stages whether we want them to or not. Like, they're going there, right? They're going to turn 18 and they're going to move out of your house at one point eventually. Like, it's going to happen.
Hopefully at some point, right?
Well, but like the danger you run into if you try to prevent those changes from happening, and I'm not saying anyone here would do that, but if you try to hold on too tightly to one season or one stage, is you run the risk of damaging relationship in a long-term fashion. Because they're going whether you want them to or not, right?
I told David it was against the law.
Also, by the way, it's illegal.
Yeah, sorry. Not going to be a thing. We'll send Jeannie after you, who works there.
He said he was going to move out when he turned 18. I said, that's against the law.
No.
But like, the danger you run into if you don't adapt with those changes is that you'll lose them permanently, rather than accepting the new nature of your relationship at each stage. And again, as someone who's very nostalgic and very sentimental, I get real, our second born, I get real weepy about, because like, this is a kid who didn't want anything to do with me until she was 18 months old, right? If she was in the room and I was trying to hold her, she'd be like this, right? Like, and then, yeah. But I'll never forget the day that she was sitting on the floor and she wanted to come to me instead of Mom. I was like, right? And so she'd been my bud for a long time. And I was like, well, now you're a preteen and we're still buds, but it's very different. And I see her growing, and she's a lot like I am. And so my inclination is to be like, pull you real close and hold, like, life's gonna be hard for you because of these things that your personality traits that are just unique. But I have to nope, we're gonna walk with you, not do it for you. Walk with you, not do it for you. Oh, and that's really, really hard for me. And so, and that's it's real, and it's hard. So, good transition point, actually, because we talked a lot last week about parenting with the end in mind. There's a church that we were at a long time ago that did a series called Backwards Parenting. And it's the idea of parenting, think of the end and work backwards, right? What do you want your kids to look like and be like? If you had complete control, but you don't, right? But if you did, in an ideal world, what would you want your kid to look like when they do break the law and move out of your house at 18? Just kidding. But parenting with the end in mind, especially with big picture ideas, values, and culture. The flip side is that you also want to be intentional with teaching practical life skills as well. We're going to get really nitty gritty and practical tonight, which I'm excited about this, because something that I'm grateful that you introduced me to the idea of doing this in an intentionally, rather than kind of as it comes. And I'm grateful that I get the chance to actually do this with my kiddos. Making lists. Anybody here love making lists? Anybody here hate making lists?
A lot of people are kind of indifferent.
Yeah, lists.
Okay.
So,
Make lists or I'm going to forget.
yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Yep. Siri is my best friend.
Okay, but that's the point. That's exactly what we talked about. Is I was like, if we don't write it
We're
down,
going to forget it.
it won't get done.
So, making a list, we're about to do a little exercise here, but make a list of what practical things you want your children to know when they leave your house, and then break it down by age. So, like, for example, cooking, housekeeping, auto care, basic health care, relationships, finances, languages, music, team building, sports, athleticism, etc. Make it unique to you, because different seasons will open up different moments to teach these things. Like you wouldn't want to try to teach a 3-year-old how to change a tire, right? That wouldn't work so well.
It's on the second page is your
Yep.
practical life skills section.
Yep. So break it down by age. Some things span multiple age seasons, and that's okay. It can feel really overwhelming. But if you start with like, I would love my kids to know how to cook. That's something I'm so grateful my parents, my mom especially, like, and my dad in some way too, but my family's Lebanese, right? And my mom she was my great-grandmother's caretaker who was from Beirut, Lebanon, right? When she moved to the States. And my mom took care of her as she was aging. And so she has all the like original written recipes from like all the like Middle Eastern food that's like tabbouleh and hummus and all the amazing things. So my mom taught me how to cook. And I'm really glad she did. I'm an artist, so I'm a musician, right? So cooking is just another art expression. It's great.
Till you have to clean it.
You know, housekeeping's on the list too.
It is.
My mom also was a very proactive, servant-hearted person and loved to clean. And so I had not cleaned a bathroom until I moved out of the house, right? I regret that I did not learn how to clean a house until I moved out. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I want my kids to know how to take care of their house. You know, how to be healthy steward of finances. So, it can feel really overwhelming, but start. Also, you'll see on the very back of your handout, I put a, are you needing to break that to do? Okay. On the very back, you'll see a QR code. We have you know how we have cc.guide as a church? We also have one for families, specifically to us, called cc.family. And there's a parent resource page that we put together for you guys that has some really cool tools and things you can use.
And if you have other ideas, we would love them to add.
That's
to
on the
list.
website. If you have an idea,
Yep.
click here. But there's a lot of things that can be practical tools for you to teach these things to your kids. Like if you're not good at auto care, but you really want your kids to be, rather than teach them how to do it wrong, right? This sounds really patronizing, but do a Google search, right? Do it. Just go out there and look for things if you don't have it already at your in your knowledge base.
Or
but
find
we put
people
some,
to help them, but that's later.
Yes, well, we put some some information on cc.family for you. But let's take about 5 minutes, and I'm not expecting you to have a fully fleshed out list, but let's start. Put a list together on your handout. What are some practical things you want your kids to know as they move out of your house one day? And then, like, in a rough fashion, try to break it down by age.
You don't have to break it down by age right now because that's like way too much. But like, and I will tell you, like a lot of where I started coming up with my list was things that I didn't know how to do.
Right.
Was like, my mom was also extremely servant-hearted and proactive in that way. And so you had two people getting married who had moms who basically literally did everything.
Let's see, you would drive home from college on the weekends from ORU 2 hours.
And bring all my dirty laundry.
With a car, the backseat packed full of laundry.
And then it would be done when I went home. Like, you know what I mean? So like, super great, love that you love your kids, but also if
teach them how to clean a toilet.
Yeah, like what are the things that they need to know? And what are the things that maybe you found lacking at some point? Like when I needed to change my own tire and had to like figure it out on the side of the road, kind of wish I'd have run through that a few times before I was by myself. You know what I mean? So what are those things?
So take a minute. Actually, 5 minutes or so. And when we're done, if you have any things that like...
Or if you have funny stories, things that you didn't know that maybe we should add to our list, we would appreciate it as well.
We are always looking to add to our list, everyone. And again, reminding you those little blank sheets of paper on your tables are for questions that you have. Again, week 4 we'll be doing a Q&A time, and
with a whole panel.
So those of you who are not always comfortable talking out loud, you can put questions on paper and we'll answer in that way. And think very practically. You can do like emotional type skills, but think very practically. One of the things for us, that was a big deal for us is musical skills. We're both musicians, and so each of our
They
kids,
were going to learn.
they pick an instrument. You're going to start with piano for at least a couple years, but after that, everyone will pick an instrument.
Yep.
Which sounds great until your 5-year-old says he wants to play drums.
You're so excited, and I'm so excited because I also want to learn to play the drums.
So excited
It's gonna be a
about
good
that.
time.
Honestly, suits him so well. Because I have him in class sometimes.
Doesn't it,
Uh-huh.
though?
It's like, oh, yep, Samuel,
Yeah.
yep.
Makes so
Yep.
much sense. But that's the thing is, like, for some families, it's going to be more sports oriented, right? Like how to play football. It's not really going to matter. It doesn't really matter if you know the game of football in my house or not, unless you go to my dad's house. Like that's kind of the only time it matters. But for some families, it's going to be more sports oriented. Like,
And ours is
cool,
not
that
necessarily
can be a
sports.
part of what your practical skills are that you want your kids to know.
But like one of the things that's on our list is healthy eating and physical activity habits. That's something that wasn't really a huge priority in our house growing up, and mine. Just for situational. Both my parents worked from the time I was pretty young, and so we were in survival most days. Remember the pathway last week, and so when it comes to health and fitness, we were pretty much on the survival for most always, and so. That's something that we put on our list that we want our kids to know how to take care of themselves physically. That's something I want to change generationally, right?
I also wanted my girls to understand the basics of makeup. Right? Like stuff like that like I didn't know. You know what I mean? But then like you go somewhere and it's like, oh, okay, get dressed up and you're in college and you're supposed to go to it. And it's like, I don't know what. Now I'm going to have raccoon eyes because I'm trying to do whatever I'm trying to do. Like, you know what I mean? So
Just get a friend that knows what she's doing.
I did that a lot. There was a lot of that happening.
We're talking about building a village next. That's the next one.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Anybody have anything they want to share, any ideas or things on your lists?
Definitely automotive stuff.
Everyone's like, yes. Did you have something?
I was gonna make a joke about what you're.
Make a joke.
Oh, but
Go
do
for
it.
I was gonna say she braid hair really well, so like it's a trade-off.
See,
There you go.
yes, that's how you do it. It was 100% what we did.
No, okay. I had not held a baby until I had our first kid. I regretted that pretty quick. It's like, I don't know how to change a diaper. Or what do I do with this tiny human? I don't know what? Right? And so I had to learn on the fly, YouTube University, all some of those things, right? Thankfully, I had a wife who was medically getting trained, and it's like, okay. But like,
It's called a
basics of-
Cabbage Patch doll. Like, right? Like,
I just was never a baby person.
I know.
I just wasn't. People tried to. I'm like, no, I'm good. I can just look from over here. And now my family's
Cute.
pastor. Isn't that ironic? Anybody want to share with the class?
we got automotive.
Automotive.
I put jumpstart a car.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I had no idea. He taught me.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
We put survival skills.
Yeah.
We don't know what's happening.
Well, I mean, ain't that real?
Hunting and fishing. I mean, that's those if you don't mind.
Ever watch the episode of The Office where Michael goes into the woods?
Oh yeah.
I turned my pants into a.
And now I'm going to refashion them back into pants.
I've been out here a couple hours. I'm starting to get hungry.
Yeah. Big Office nerd.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you have something?
I don't think I held a baby either, because I never had like younger cousins or anything. Also mowing the lawn.
Lawn care. That's a good one.
I have one that loves it, the other two do not.
Yeah. Okay, power tool safety. That's something like my grandfather was the chief electrical engineer at McDonnell Douglas, the big airplane plant here in town for a long time. And so he and my dad, we lived at the lake next to my grandparents growing up. And that was something Papa Joe would always, and he's still to this day. I'm pretty sure his house is held together by duct tape, zip ties, and aircraft grade epoxy. But I tell you, he told me the proper way to hold a bandsaw, or you know what I mean, like how to operate a power tool. That's something Papa Joe was big about. And your grandfather, I mean, was a lineman for OG&E. And there are some times I'm like, if I hold this wire the right way, DB's going to come out of his grave and attack. No, we're gonna be careful with our electrical skills. Anybody else? Let's share with you what's on your list. Anybody?
I put
Swimming?
Hey, okay, I can't swim, y'all. So that was like a big deal. I was like, I'm glad you grew up at the lake because you have to teach them how to swim. Because I cannot, and it's terrible.
Yep.
See, these are good things.
Do you have something?
My first thing I put on there is to have and keep good credit.
Ooh.
Healthy
Winning.
financial responsibility. Understand.
As soon as he's 13, so.
Yeah.
There is a resource we put on that CC.family called Greenlight. Anybody heard of Greenlight before?
Yeah, we haven't.
Oh
it's
my gosh, I
magical.
love Greenlight.
It's it's a teaching financial responsibility to kids. They get their own debit card that you manage, but they can learn how to invest, right?
But it also
Or
has
save,
it has a
give,
chore
spend.
list. You basically can upload chores and you can decide what their allowance is. And depending on how many chores they check off is how much of their allowance that they get.
You can even put fun pictures of them, like Wes does.
See?
There you go.
She's like, let me show you.
That's a resource on, and they have things like training on credit score. Like
They do. There's like little videos and little
it's
things they
phenomenal. Highly recommend
You
it.
start that.
can do. I'm currently trying to
We
get
are
our
fighting
5-year-old
about this a
on.
little bit right now. She wants our 5-year-old to do it. Like, we do it when he's like 7 or 8.
He could do it though. That's the thing, is he really could.
He probably could.
He
Phone, right?
No, they have.
On
So
an
they
iPad.
did homeschool for a few years through Epic, so they have iPads from that still. And so
But even if you have one iPad, they can have multiple logins, and they
Yeah.
can log into their account, and you can check them off too. Like they don't necessarily. You could do it if you wanted to. They could check in with you, because there are times you have to be like, I know you checked off that you cleaned your room, but I'm gonna come upstairs
that's
and
not
we're gonna
clean,
look.
guy. Yeah.
Like,
Or I know you said you don't know the dishwasher, but you put everything on the countertop. No,
not the same.
that's not no.
And what is that called?
Greenlight.
Greenlight.
If you scan the QR code on the very back of your handout there, yeah, it's on that CC. Yeah, the yellow button, the parent resources. There's a whole list, and it's on that list.
And it's Greenlight.
Yeah, super cool tool.
So we did a bunch of skills and stuff, but like just a characteristic that like my dad always like instilled was like no quit, like you can't quit.
There you go.
Like once you start something, you can't quit it.
So that goes back to last week we talked about the priorities and core values. That might be a foundation of your like family vision statement. So like ours, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but like one of ours is get it done. If you start something, you're going to finish it, right? No matter how hard it is. And sometimes I'm like, well, I regret saying that,
And-
but we're going to finish it.
We still have good conversations about also how to end well, but when the appropriate time
Right.
to end something and walk away is, right? Like we're not going to quit in the middle of a season, but if at the end of the season you're like, you know what, this isn't for me anymore, it is okay for you
Right.
to become a different person in a way, right? To grow and to change. But get it done, man. We get it done. And then we talk about it.
Let's move on. So, we get asked about this next component in City Kids a lot. We did a parent response survey earlier in the year about discipleship group topics. And probably of the 70 or so responses I got from families, probably 80% of them was about relationships and friendships. And relationships this is the one topic that's going to affect all of us, right? Regardless of your age, regardless of your experiences, relationships is part of life. You can't live life without people around you. It'd be easier sometimes, but you can't. It's not the case, right? And it's one of the things that will be an ongoing teaching opportunity for you as parents, but also an ongoing learning opportunity for you as parents through every season of your life and your children's lives. And so, okay, we think of the end, right? Parenting backwards, but everything starts at home. And so the first question I'm going to ask you with regards to friendships is, are you modeling healthy friendships and relationships for your kids? Are you modeling healthy social lives? Do your kids know who your friends are? Do they know who you call when you have a hard question? And do they see you express appropriate vulnerability at home? You'll know what I mean when I say appropriate vulnerability? Right, be vulnerable, but there's still a line of appropriateness of like, I can't go into all the things, right? And based on age, like my 5-year-old's not going to know a lot of behind the curtain that my 13-year-old might, with relationships especially. So it's important for your kids to see behind the curtain of how you build friendships, because they're going to see you at the stage you're at, with your already developed friendships and your already healthy friendships, not the stage that you are when you were 10. And so like with our 10-year-old especially, building friendships has been a struggle because it's a hard time. right? 5th and 6th grade is a hard age. And so they're like, well, you have friends. Why don't I? Well, okay, you're 10, right? My first truly close friend came into my life when I was 25, right? But you don't want to hear that because it's going to sound like terrifying, right? And so they need to be able to understand how you got to where you are with your relationships, even with your spouse, right? Or your parents or your siblings, how you got to, if, assuming you have good relationships with, or even if you don't, there's still an appropriate vulnerability. Like, well, we don't talk to cousin so-and-so, and that's just where we are right now, right? We've had seasons with aunts and uncles, like, hey, you know what? We love Uncle so-and-so, but we're going to love him from a distance right now because he's not okay.
He's not making great choices.
Right.
And so we're going to pray for him. And then
that's
obviously
okay.
the older ones know a little bit more of the why.
Right. So we all talk about the idea of we need a village, right? But building a village is really important. And it's not just like something it's a cutesy saying. Building a village is not just about practical support, but it's also to introduce healthy voices and other perspective into your children's lives. So in the future, when they don't want to talk to you about it, but they feel close enough to talk to one of your friends, they're going to get a healthy input. Not perfectly controlled, because you can't do that, but healthy, because you've chosen healthy friends, right? And this means that who you choose as even like babysitters matters. People who are consistent faces and voices in your kids' lives matter. So there's a couple of practical tools that we want to go through that will kind of give you some steps you can walk through with your kids as they get older, but also even in your own life. And so there's a few different, I'm going to go to the whiteboard here.
Okay.
And forgive me, my handwriting's not nearly as good as Lindsay's was last week. It's bad when your physician spouse has a better handwriting than you do. The doctor joke about handwriting is like, anyways. Okay, so these are called levels of relationship. And it's important. Healthy boundaries are really important. And knowing who fits in what boundary with relationships can be very difficult, but also very freeing. And so, a couple of tools here. Okay, we have levels of relationship. We have, at the very top, we have exchange. These people, I'm going to pay you for this thing that you're doing in my life, right? Babysitting. Contractors, right? People who are providing a service. Or some kind of exchange, coworkers.
Carpooling. You carpool with another parent that's like, I'll pick your kids up on Tuesday and drop them off if you'll pick them up on Thursday and drop them off.
Okay.
Strict exchange.
Participation. People you spend some time with, right? People who we're going to go to church with these people, right? We work with these people. We're going to engage with each other outside of just a practical exchange relationship, right? Now, what's important to note about these things, all these people have voices into your and your family's lives, right? Whether you want them to or not. So who you pick for these levels is important. Friendship. Right? Friendship. Self-explanatory. People we're friends with, right? People who we do life with, people we're connected to, people we hang out with, we spend some time with. Again, it's not exchange-based. It's more than just participation. We're going to actually spend meaningful time with these people. And then the deepest level is intimacy. These people know us. We know them and they know us, right? They are people who, spouses or really, really, really close, true friends who can see behind the curtain of, hey, life's not... These are the people who can look at you and go, you're not okay, just by looking at you. Because they know you. They know how you respond. They know how you engage in life because they've spent that much time. You want to add anything to this? So being able to kind of categorize your relationships is important. This is more of an adult level tool. You're not going to walk your kids and say, okay, who's an exchange relationship in your life today? You're not going to do that, right? But these are things that you can use as filters to kind of categorize relationships. There's another, you have it on your handout, this circle of friendships or relationships. So kind of using this kind of level, And there's another example we're going to give you in a minute. Don't skip ahead just yet. We'll start with the blank one. But knowing what value certain relationships bring into your circles, right, is important. So there are people who are going to be one-way friends, right? You want to talk about one-way friends for just a minute, because these are important things to keep note of.
I mean, one-way friends are going to be the people who, like, you're the one that's always reaching out. And you might enjoy it, and when you do hang out, it's great, but you just know that, like, if you're ever going to hang out with them, it's because you're going to initiate it, or because you just happen to be at the same party, or you happen to be somewhere that you're together. You know what I mean? Like, we all have them, okay? Sometimes
that's okay.
It's just the way life works.
Right.
And that's okay. But if you have the right perspective of being able to say, okay, this person is just that right now. Can they maybe potentially move out of that? Yeah. When I was in residency, I was a one-way friend with everyone,
Most
probably
people.
including you.
Probably,
Like,
yeah, sometimes.
if you want to talk to me, you're going to talk to me. I don't exist otherwise. Like, this is just what my life is going to be right now. But, and so there has to be grace for some of our people even who maybe were previously not one-way friends to kind of become that for a season. They have a new baby. They're going through a divorce. There's something that's happening. Like,
They're moving.
Like, things are happening. Sometimes that transition will happen. And if you're able to kind of, I think, put words to it, we don't become bitter and cynical as people as much, because we're able to say, you know what, this is just what it is right now. And that's okay. Does it maybe hurt a little bit if we move into that? Yeah, but either I can understand it because I know what's going on in their life, or I can't, and I'm just going to have to forgive it and let it go. But I'm not going to try to create something that isn't going to be there and expect something that's not.
Your adult child is a one-way friend. Like, he doesn't ever call, or I have to call him.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, have you ever called me? You know? And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, maybe I should just go stop by his house. Or maybe,
Yeah.
just like, at what point do you like step back and see, let me see how long it'll take him to call me. Like, or,
I think as a parent, right, it's going to be different, right, than it would be if it's just someone that I knew in college, right? And I think a lot of that's going to be based on, like, what your previous history and relationship was before, and if something has changed, you know what I mean? Like, did you tell him no and he got mad? Or, you know what I mean? Or is it just that's the way that he interacts with life? And
Right.
and sometimes that's where, depending on what the relationship with your kid is, I think you can say, hey, I've noticed I'm the one who always reaches out. Does it bother you when I reach out? Do you mind if I reach out? Because I would love to hear from you too. And instead of it just being those kind of like side comments, like, I've looked at my 13-year-old and been like, okay, I know you're growing and I know you're changing, and I am happy for you to have other friends and for me not to be your number one priority, and that's fine. But understand, when we are here and when I'm taking you to dinner and it's just you or we're just hanging out watching a movie, I need you to be here with me, because that's how we're going to build a relationship and keep a relationship. Because it's hurtful when you're on your phone. So I'm going to put my phone away and you put your phone away. And I know I do that to you sometimes, and you're going to do it to me sometimes. So tonight, let's not. You know what I mean? And I think to open up in that vulnerable space of just calling it what it is, without being rude or passive aggressive. And if the answer is, no, Mom, like, I always know you're going to call, so I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
I do notice, and I think this is probably we're getting off the trail here, but he, like, a lot, like, if I'll tell him things about his brother. Like, there's a big, Jonathan is 23, David is 12.
Yeah.
So there's a big gap.
Yeah, big gap.
Yeah, so if David upsets me, I'll call Jonathan and be like, he did this and he did that, and he said this, and, instead, like, a lot of times he'll be like, what'd you do? I'm like, I cried. And he'll be like, well, you would whoop me, and I'm like, it's not always about you.
well, and so maybe a way that you can figure out how to create bridges, right? So maybe instead of just calling and saying this is what happened, but let me ask you, when you were 12, what would have helped you in this situation? What could I do to be there for him? Is there something, like, you can do for, how do we, and pull him in?
Give him a chance to have meaningful
to be like,
contribution.
yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's worth a shot.
So let's take a minute. I'll do this exercise with you guys. So we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper after we break out here, but kind of thinking with this in mind, we love our bullseyes here in City Families, right? So it kind of drills down, right? See the kind of the parallel a little bit? So take a second amongst yourselves and kind of list your friendships and kind of in which circles they exist.
And I would say do this as individuals.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that I'm saying that. But do this as individuals.
Notice also I put a little box in there that says mentors. We should always be seeking out people who bring specific wisdom into our lives, right? These may not be people who have... okay, hold on, kiddos.
Oh, good.
Okay, that's fun.
Solid.
Walkie-talkie, great. Mom's going to take care of it. Yeah.
Yep.
So we should always be seeking, and these may not be people who are always super intimacy.
Lucy keeps throwing up in the trash can.
Good.
Yeah, let me tell him. Well, thank you for sharing that with our entire class, Asher. We love you.
You're going to get a response.
No, he just hung up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So we should be seeking out people with... Oh, here he is again. Thank you, Asher. Mom's going to call Ruthie, okay? We're in the middle of class. Love you, buddy.
Okay.
Okay.
They have an Apple Watch that they use, anyways. So, there's apparently a stomach bug going around. So, great, awesome. We should always, a mentor may not fall into one of these levels right here, right? They may be someone who's a bit more detached from us relationally, but if that's someone who can, that relationship brings specific wisdom and specific value, that's okay. That person doesn't have to be super intimate relationship-wise, but if they bring specific wisdom, take note of who they are. There you go.
So
Very
do
good.
you want us to put our friends' names here
Yeah, this is just for you.
in the bullet?
Yeah, you don't have to turn these in. So if
Yeah.
someone's sitting next to you and they didn't make the
Just
list, it's
take
okay.
inventory, right? Take stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, do we start it like in the middle?
Wherever you want to start it.
Okay, think of it this
But-
way, right? Drill it down, right? So the outer levels are more exchange, a little less, right? The closer you get to that core inner circle, right? That's,
Okay.
yeah. But take stock. Are you talking to her? And I'll say, if you're having trouble, because and large villages is not what we're talking about here. Right? It's not a matter of who has the most friends wins, right? But there was a point in my life where I realized I didn't have a lot of people around me and who I'd let into my close circle. And I'd taken stock and was like, maybe I need to change that about myself, right? Maybe I need to open myself up or be relationally proactive and pursue connection, because we can't do this alone.
And then the other thing is in the mentor box. I say this to our middle school kids on Sundays a lot, is there are some people that I would call if I have a patient and I don't know what to do. Like, I have certain doctors that I will call and be like, because I can pick up the phone and be like, okay, what do I do with this, right? Never would I take their marriage advice. Never would I take their parenting advice, right? So there are going to be different mentors in your lives for different things. And it's okay to recognize that this is the person I would call about a finance question.
Right.
And this is the person that I would call about a parenting question. And if our marriage isn't doing so well, this is who I would call. Like, it's okay to break that down.
Specific wisdom,
Yeah.
right? That's okay.
That's fine.
So we're going to move on here in a second to kind of expanding the same idea of these relationship circles to how you can teach your children to build a village, right? To build their own circles of people, especially as they get older. As they're littles, it's not as, I'm pretty sure our youngest one didn't know his friends' names at school he played with every day last year in preschool. This year he's starting to. Well, I played with so-and-so today.
We remember names
Last
now.
year, like, I played with a girl. Who?
Great.
I don't know her name.
What class is she in? I don't know. All
But
right,
we
cool.
played sharks and minnows.
Cool.
Okay.
No. So one of the things is if you fill these out separately and you are a married or close to married couple, is to take those and compare them. Because if you consider someone to be really, really close to you and that person didn't even make the other person's list, is it just because like this is your childhood friend and like that's totally cool and everyone's fine with it? Or do we need to figure out, is there a way to get closer to your close friends? And is there a way for us to integrate those villages? Because then that expands the village for each of us further.
It's not about removing people from the list necessarily. It's
Ideally,
yeah,
right?
we're not like, oh, well, that person's on your list but not mine. So, that's not
So
about
no
that.
one makes the list.
Right, no.
So that was just kind of the side note on why we're doing them separately, because it is good, I think, to, if you can sit down and talk about, like, actually, I consider this person to be really close, and you don't know them. We've worked to get together with those people and get to know those people in each other's lives, so that then that creates that depth of relationship as well.
Because especially if you're married or moving towards that, if that person has context on your spouse, they'll have more context on you, right? Which is a good thing. That's what you want. You want your people who are in that close circle to have context on you, right?
Yeah. All right, so then the thing that we're going to talk about is how do we take this and teach our kids, right? This isn't something I would do with my 5-year-old, but I have done this with them when they've hit 6, 7, and 8 even. And we've talked to them about, this isn't MySpace ranking your friends. So you have to make sure that this doesn't become like a competition. This is not something we go and we tell other people about. This is so that we know who we can trust, who the Lord has put in our lives to pray for, to reach out to be friends with in particular, and other people that we know that we can trust, right? And so you start talking about it in that kind of a language. So if you flip, then you have this other circle, and this is another way that you can talk to them about it, instead of it being like, what's an exchange relationship? Because again, the 6-year-old's going to be like, I don't.
What?
So you want me to give my toys away? Like, I don't understand, right? So in the middle, you can have family. So that's where we talk about like, okay, so this is mommy and this is grandma and grandpa, or whoever it is that are their inner circle. You can help them fill this out as they're growing, right? Because you're going to know, and you've created their circle. And this helps them to be able to put words to that and to understand, who are your trustworthy people? Who are the people that, we call for maybe a fun friend? I love that. That's my favorite. A fun friend. I have fun friends. Friends that I really enjoy having fun with, but I also know I may not trust you to do anything else besides have fun with. Like, I enjoy running into you. I'm glad we have the same circle of friends. And if I have a concert ticket at the last minute, I might call you because you're going to be a great time. But that's only if you answer the phone, right? Like, we all have those people. And that's okay. And also explaining, like, it's okay. Maybe our fun friends are people that we see that maybe we are being Jesus to, that don't know Jesus, right? And this is where you can start talking about your faith and how to integrate that into their daily lives. Who are your friends at your desk at school? Do you play with them a lot? Who are the people you see every week at church that you really enjoy and that maybe you prayed for each other in discipleship group? Like, those are going to be maybe a little bit closer because you may be able to trust that they're on the same spiritual page as you are, and that you can have different conversations with these friends than you can with these friends.
And
right?
And that core inner circle changes less frequently than the other levels do, right? Close friends and BFFs and fun friends, depending on the levels of trust that are earned, because the trust is the big motivator for those levels, right? Can I trust this person to be, can I tell them things about me and trust they're not going to hurt me with those things, right? Mm-hmm. Can I trust that they're going to make good choices around me, right? Do we feel good about letting this person influence me, mm-hmm. right? That's kind of how you...
Teaching the word acquaintance, right? Not everyone is a friend, and that's okay, because I think there's a big, what
context they belong in.
Right.
I know you from school.
Mm-hmm. But they're not necessarily a friend, and that's okay.
It could go either way. You could.
So, and
I'll say this too, sometimes, about acquaintances, sometimes we make the choice to keep someone as just an acquaintance, mm-hmm. right? Like, that person is not kind. That person is hurtful to people. That we need to be, my parents would say, be friendly, but don't be their friend, right?
You can be kind, but just understand the goal is for you to influence them not to influence you.
from over
Right.
here.
Yeah.
From over here.
From across the room sometimes.
Sometimes. Because, some children, we have one that they want everyone to be their friend. Everyone. Right? And if everyone's not their friend, something's wrong with the world. And so we've had to walk this child through like, you know what? Not everyone's going to like you. That's okay. You shouldn't try to be everyone's BFF. That's not a thing. And so the whole idea of like be friendly, but don't be their friend has been it was a hard one for me to grasp as a kid. And so
I just didn't care. So
no,
whatever.
you still
If you don't like me, it's whatever. Like, but that's also where like your parenting personalities. We've also learned that there are some moments where I go, Michael, you have to finish this conversation because I am about to lose it with this kid because for whatever reason they just, it's probably like talking to myself is probably what it is, but like, oh my gosh, like, you know what I mean? And so having that where you can tap in a different personality sometimes, a different way of speaking, a different all of those things
helps.
can help pull that in.
And sometimes if you have to pull out, take a minute, reorganize your thoughts, and come back into the conversation. Like if you're on your own having the conversation, sometimes you don't have someone to tag in with. You reverse. Let's take 5 minutes and cool down. Let's go get a drink. Let's go get an ice cream cone. Let's go
Old school.
Get
Go
a
to your
snack.
room. Go to your room.
If they're just in
Go to
trouble,
your room.
go to your room. We'll come back and talk. Wait for me to come talk to you.
Yeah.
Oh, that still gives me chills when I talk about that.
But that's a side note. Also, sitting down and having a mentors list with them. Do they have goals in life already? Do they want to be the most famous guitar player in the world? Who's your mentor? Who are you looking at that you want to follow in that?
People not in your peer group. People in your peer group are, at that age, not mentors, right?
And also having that conversation.
Yeah. No, another 12-year-old is not going to be your mentor, kiddo. Sorry. That's not how that works.
But that is why, like, these sorts of things are great tools to begin conversations. You don't have to have the whole conversation in one day. But sometimes it's a matter of, like, let's just talk about this week at our weekly meeting. We're going to talk about this one thing. Is it red, yellow, or green? You know what I mean? It's
Who are your really close friends right now?
Who would you consider to be your close people? And then the next week is, so who are your mentors? Oh gosh, that sounds very official. But who do you learn from? Who do you want to be like in life? You know?
And then making sure, like we talked about last week when you asked the questions, drill down. Okay, what about that person makes them fun to be around? Right? Why do you like spending time with that person? Like, get them to put their finger on it of the idea so that they can start to define those levels of friendship without being like, let's draw circles on paper, kids, right?
And then kind of to go back to your circle, like and this is something we've been talking about a lot, I think recently, just with all the friendship things as kids have grown, is having the conversations of, you know why I like this person and you know why we're friends? Why? Well, this is how we met. And I tell the story. This is how we met. And then we still weren't really friends until this point. But then
We didn't
this
like that
happened.
person at first, but now they're like family to us. Like, oh, how'd that happen? Here's how it happened.
Explain the story of how things happen and talk about the things that I like about this person and the things that I trust about this person and why we enjoy going, you know what I mean? Like having those conversations about where you are provides them the vocabulary and the understanding of like, okay, I do have someone like that in my life. I do have a friend that I enjoy just spending time with, and she's actually really nice to everyone. And that makes me want to be like her. You know what I mean? Like those kinds of conversations, as you explain yourself, that's that appropriate vulnerability. As you become vulnerable, that helps them then talk to you about their friends too. So, where else? Oh, yes.
Oh,
okay.
yes. I want to talk about this one, but you do it better. So
I do? Okay. We also want our kids to find and build these circles. So,
like you want them to build their own circles for themselves.
yeah.
You want them to build friendships. Like that's the goal. Because building healthy relationships, I'm not going to do it, I promise. I just want to say one thing.
Do you see
If they can get out of your house and know how to build healthy relationships, they will have so much easier of a time navigating life than if they don't learn people until they're 20, like I did. I didn't learn people until I'm so grateful for one of my managers at Apple. When I went to work for Apple, he was like, Michael, you're going to take a little pad of paper, and you're not going to talk over people. You're going to take notes of what they're saying to you before you answer them. You teach me to listen to people? Okay. Right?
So one of the things is, because we are all the Ubers of our children. They can't get there
Unpaid
without
Ubers.
us. Right.
Unpaid Ubers.
But are you placing them in situations where they can build those villages with the good ones, right? Are you prioritizing the small groups at church? And I am here to tell you.
Shameless plug.
Yes, church is not my favorite place, y'all. Like, it just is not, and it hasn't been for a long time. And if you know me at all, there's a whole lot wrapped up in that, okay? So I am not here saying there's a program, you should be there. But what I'm saying is you still have to find those places where the kids are that are going to believe the same way that your kids do, so that they can have those people in their lives that are going to lift them up when they are not feeling it. So that they're going to have those people who are going to be able to speak life into them when they say, I really don't like church, right? And they're going to have those people who can say, but remember these experiences, and remember that time we went to church camp, but let's go talk to our discipleship group leader, because you're having a hard time and you made me promise not to tell your mom, but let's go tell this person over here, right? You allowing them to create their village, not always being in the village, but placing them in the right ones. Now, alternatively, it's also making sure that you're putting them in ones that are not always the same and don't always believe the same way that you do, and teaching them how to handle those types of scenarios as well.
Another skill that you want them to learn before they leave the house is how to get along with people who are not like themselves. Ethnically, religiously, socially, right? You don't want them to live in a bubble and then get into the real world and realize, oh, the bubble doesn't actually exist anymore. And here I am trying to make this insular bubble, but it's a house of cards.
And so it is. It's, the more that you will just open up and talk with your kids, the better. That's how they're going to learn.
Now, you still want to be a filter for those circles.
Yes.
Right? It's still your job to shape them. Sometimes it means you get to be friends with the kids' parents. That's super fun.
What if you don't like their parents?
So,
Okay.
great question.
Exactly. That's where we're going.
Yeah.
So sometimes this is where we've talked about, there are some parents that you will meet that it's like, I don't like you. But
and I don't like you because of this behavior,
Well-
this belief, this thing. Not just like,
well,
you're
no.
weird.
Okay, you
sorry.
interrupted. So hold on. Take your little pad of paper and take some notes if you want something to say. Okay. So it's one of those things where there are times that it's like that mom is just like, oh my, I cannot handle the way you talk. I cannot. Why? Just why? But they're a good person. They're good to their kids. You can tell that you know what I mean? And they are best friends. Their kid is best friends with your kid. And that's one of those where we kind of have to die to self sometimes. And we have to play nice. And we have to realize that it's not always about us and whether we like the parents, as long as they're good and safe people, right? There are also those instances where your kid has a friend and their house is not necessarily a safe space or a place that you feel comfortable sending your kid. And
that's okay.
And that's okay.
And it's okay to say, hey, that's a friend that we're going to have at school. Or that friend can come to our house, but you probably won't go to their house. Well, why? That's just how it's going to be.
And as they age, and as you continue to talk to them about friendships and influence and how that works, a lot of times, I'm now getting the pieces of our oldest pretty much knows, and she can tell me why. She'll be like, hey, this is my friend, and I like them. This is what I know about their family. I'm probably not going to go to their house. It's her, she's decided. And it's like, okay, cool. That's fine. But could I ride with them to Brahms? Do you feel safe riding with them? You know what I mean? And you can have those conversations, and that allows them then the autonomy to begin to build that do you feel safe in this scenario? And have we taught you, the things to look for and all that sort of stuff?
Because there's a fine line between controlling their circles, filtering their circles, and shaping their circles, right? You want to make sure that you're putting them in safe places. That is, yes, obviously. You want to make sure that you're not putting them somewhere that's unsafe for them at any point. But there is also a line between like, that's not my preference versus that's not healthy, right? And it is sometimes, I was talking to a friend, a parent of one of our kids' friends, and he's like, about this topic, and he's like, I had a conversation one time with the parent confronted me. Why won't you let your daughter come to our house? And
Our daughters come to your house, but you won't let yours come to ours.
And he had to say, well, the things that you all choose to watch and speak and do in your house are not things I want to encourage my daughter to do. And so your daughter is welcome to come to our house, but that's not a safe place for my kid. And they were livid, but then they came back a few days later and was like, you know what? I respect that. It's not always going to end that way, but that
Doesn't
one
usually
did.
end that way, I don't think, but.
Right. He was like, I almost expected to get, slapped, but I had to be honest. And then they came back and was like, you know what? I respect you for that. I was like, that's an unusual ending to that story.
And this is where it's still our job to be Jesus.
Yeah.
It's still our job to be Jesus to the parents, and it's still our job to be Jesus to the kids, and it's still our job to show love and respect and kindness, even if the answer is no.
Yep.
And as you walk that out and live appropriate vulnerability but appropriate boundaries with people, your kids will see it, and they will pick up on the things that you do and the relationships you have and the things that you say.
So as we're going here, if you have questions, please write them down on those papers. We really want to be able to get back to this with the panel. I'm very excited about the panel we have coming, so we want to answer your questions. All these things are completely irrelevant if your child lacks self-awareness of how to be a good friend, right? They don't matter at all if you don't teach your child how to be a good friend. This is printed on your little handout. In order to find good friends, you must also be a good friend. If you want to find people who are trustworthy, be the kind of person who is worthy of someone's trust, right? If you want to find friends who make good choices in the hard moments, be the good friend who makes good choices in the hard moments. Show love without strings attached. This is one that we've had to walk through.
One-way friends.
Yeah, yeah. This is something. This next phrase here I'm going to tell you guys is something we've had to walk through with our kids recently, especially as they start to discover and struggle with identity. I'm like, I don't like the way I am. Well, people aren't going to like, accept, or respect somebody who doesn't do those things for themselves, right? And that's a very weighty conversation. There's multiple conversations involved in that. How do you teach your kid to like themselves, to be okay with who they are, how to respect themselves, how to treat themselves with respect, right? How to accept themselves and to truly find peace in how they're created and how they're wired. To find the friend they want, they have to become the kind of friend, right? Be the thing you wish you had. Sometimes it's lonely. And that is probably one of the most heartbreaking things as a parent, is to watch your child be lonely and know there's nothing you can do about it. Because, have any of us here walked through seasons of loneliness, whether as children or adults? Yeah. And so it's hard to watch your kid go through that, especially if they're lonely because of making good choices or lonely because they're trustworthy, right? It's weighty and it's hard. And we've had many private tears over our kids, struggling through that. And tears with our kids, struggling through, I just want friends. But there's no one around who's making good choices right now. Or there's no one around who's trustworthy. Right? And then ultimately, the struggle they walk through is, maybe there's something wrong with me. And if there truly isn't, reinforcing, sometimes there are lonely seasons. That doesn't mean you should change who you are. Oh, guys, I'll tell you, that is a real one as you walk your kids into teenage years. It is a real one. But go ahead.
And that's where I think also, like, we have walked through significant lonely seasons in our lives, separately and together.
Yep.
And being able to, when your kid feels lonely, to tell them about when you were lonely. To be able to cry in front of them and remember what it felt like and go there creates, you have a bond there, but it also takes away some of the loneliness. They're still going to feel lonely when they have to go to school tomorrow and there's no one there that they can sit by. But at least they'll know, Mom did this, Dad did this. I know other cool people, the village that you have created, that also had those lonely seasons. And if you surround yourself with the people who will talk to them, they will hear it and they will get that fortitude to be able to remain themselves, become good people, become the kind person.
Even through loneliness.
Even when they're lonely.
And so, before they start school or go into any kind of social situations, it's good for you to have conversations like, what kind of person do you want to be today? Right? Who do you want to be? What makes a good friend? And again, these are open-ended questions that encourages them to talk, right? What makes a good friend? And then kind of turning it back around as an action step. Well, okay, so how are you going to be a good friend today? This teaches the beginnings of self-awareness and ultimately will prevent them from being the kind of person who will blame everyone else for the problems they're dealing with. So we don't want that, right? We don't want our kids to walk into the world blaming everyone else for all my problems, when really you should, maybe look in the mirror and examine yourself. And so that's something that as adults, as parents, we should examine about ourselves. Do we find that we blame other people before examining ourselves, right? Do we lack self-awareness sometimes? It's real. So.
There's so many things I think wrapped up in this, and making sure that when you notice that your kid is off, they come home with that story of someone was mean to me. How do you walk them through grieving that sadness and forgiveness, and then turning around and still being kind to them anyway? Walking through the entire cycle of those relationships and understanding that this is life. Mm-hmm. That you will never get away. Like, we have this conversation. I work with stupid people too. I literally have said that to my kids. I'm like, I know. I work with people who are mean too. It's not about them. It's about how I react to it. And it's about who I am through my day. Yep. That makes me who I am, that allows me to be Jesus where the Lord has placed me. And so opening up with them about where you are, I'm telling you, like, the more they hear from you about how you process and walk your world is how they will begin to internally process and walk theirs. Mm-hmm. Even when you mess up, which I never do. So
yes, dear. And here's the thing. If you're in a home with multiple siblings, this can start as like, hey, what kind of sibling are you? What kind of sibling do you want to be? Mm-hmm. My brother or sister, Sibling conflict is a great laboratory for teaching unconditional love, forgiveness, patience, non-retaliation, how to mend broken trust, and active listening. And we kind of want to wrap up with this idea of siblings because, as a parent, if sibling 1 comes complaining about sibling 2, our natural gut instinct is going to want to be to jump into action, right? But sometimes we got to sit there and listen to it, right? Let them feel safe to vent their frustrations before you rush into correcting them for being wrong or correcting the sibling for screwing up, right? You're really good at this, so talk about how you do that. Because I'm the parent who's like, okay, get over here.
You over here, and this is what we're doing.
Whew, for me to be like, let's just take a minute and listen.
So part of it is ask questions. Okay, that's how you're feeling. What happened? Tell me what happened. Okay, what do you think you should do about that? I'm not going to do anything. What do you want me to do? This is your relationship with your sibling. Do you think that you should go tell them that hurt your feelings? Probably. Do you think you should tell them, hey, this is my special thing that grandma gave me, and I really don't want to play with it right now. And so XYZ. And then have that conversation with them and then let them go do it. And then basically you have that conversation of, and if it goes well, great. Say you're sorry for your part of it. Do this part of this. If they won't listen, then come back and we'll talk about it more. And then when they don't listen, because that happens half the time, then we pull the other sibling in and we say, okay, what happened? Did they tell you how they felt? Yes. Okay. Do you want to be heard? You know what I mean? Like it's just having the conversation. It's peer mediation.
And sometimes we're going to talk about this later together when we have time.
So you do this over and over and over again until it sticks?
Oh, yeah.
That's most of parenting. Yes.
I don't know, I just like and I don't want to take a bunch
Go
of
for
time
it.
or whatever, but something super difficult with growing up with my brother. I had siblings and I have way older siblings and then I have 2 younger siblings. So, but we had a lot of chores. We lived on 67 acres, a bunch of farm animals,
lot of chores.
things like that. So something that always happened with my little brother was he's just lazy. So I would get so mad, and then my dad's just all this stuff has to be done. So
Someone's got to do it.
Figure it out.
Oh, yeah. So I will jump in at that point. If someone's being lazy, then we do. We jump on
We don't do
that.
lazy.
We fought, all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like my brother is kind of messed up in the dome from the fights and the stuff that we went through. Because I'm not kidding. And it was always. And my dad was. I've never heard my dad yell. On the football field, so we could hear it.
Okay.
And that was it. My dad never yelled. Obviously, hard punishments,
Sure.
spankings and kangaroo court or whatever. But that's legit.
Okay.
I was in jail in the bathroom for 5 days on peanut butter and jelly, so that was cool. But so step in for sure, because that didn't happen with me and my brother,
Right.
and I seriously feel like he's
So-
probably messed up a little bit.
But the way that I would step in is not, now you have to do all the chores. That's not how I would step in. The way I would step in is,
I'm saying
okay,
it's a 2-person job, and I can't make it or get it done because he won't do his part.
correct.
So,
So,
I'm carrying a piece of wood. I can't carry this piece of wood by myself.
Right.
We make it 3 foot at a time, and I'm getting so
Yeah.
mad because I'm trying to have this done already.
Right.
and he's
yeah.
100%.
So as a parent, and I look, if that's happening, because this happens with the dishes, the laundry, because we try to also make it where they're reliant upon one another, is having the conversation with the lazy one, right? Of, okay, understand, this is what their day looks like. They can't load the dishwasher until you've unloaded the dishwasher. And because you've sat on your butt, now these are the consequences of your actions and how they now have to change their day because of what your
Bad choice.
laziness and your disregard for them was. So do you love your sibling? Yes. Okay.
Do you want to be
we-
selfish?
Right.
Because most of that kind of thing, most sibling conflict is rooted in selfishness, right? And so, we have our first question of the evening.
Okay, bye.
Most of that is rooted in selfishness. And most kids, if you confront them with, you're being selfish, they're going to go, what? Right? But they don't want to acknowledge it, so you have to kind of here it is. You being selfish. And here's how that affects everybody else around you.
Because part of it
That's
is
teaching self-awareness.
because part of it is well, I don't want to load it right now. I'll just do it later, even if that's the thought process. But when you're 10, that's as far as your brain goes. You have to teach them to think. And then when I do that, what
me a
are the
favor.
consequences of my
Write
actions?
this down on one of those papers. I'd love for our panel to talk about this on week 4.
what specifically
Just how do you handle, right?
Sibling conflict.
Huge gap. I find myself always being so my oldest is 11, and then the second one, where she's always fighting, is 3. And I'm like, okay, but you're the older one. You have more understanding and knowledge versus she does not. But then she gets mad because she's like, well, you're not,
Okay,
getting onto her.
so we've
but
had
it's
to-
coming back on me.
We've had to most of our children, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, all 4 of them, are big into the whole fairness motivation. And teaching that it's not fair, but it's just, is a really important and difficult thing to do. It's like, you know what? When you were 3, I didn't ask you to do this because it wasn't just of me to do that for you. So I'm not going to ask her to do that either, right? Because she's not ready for that.
Have you seen the box thing?
You mean
Like the difference between fairness and justice. Okay, I need someone really tall and I need someone really short.
she wants the volunteers.
I need someone really tall and I need someone really short.
I think you're probably the tallest, and I'm the yeah.
Okay.
Who's short? Who wants to be the short volunteer? Atlanta or Jeannie? There we go.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Well, you know what?
she's going with.
Yeah, okay. See, we're all headed in the same direction here. Okay. So basically, fairness is, okay, you're trying to see the football game over here and there's a fence. So fairness is each of you get a step stool that's exactly the same and both of you get up there. Can you do that? Do you think it'll break? Do you think it'll be good? Oh! Okay. So this is fair. Does that, like, he still can't freaking see, right? Because maybe the fence is like right here or something. Okay. But just is going to be if you get down. Just would maybe be this, because maybe you can see over the fence anyway, and then I'm not going to make you get on that. But that is justice, right? And if you can do that with your kids, like figure out the boxes and line them up and show them what that looks
Thank
like.
you, volunteers. You can sit down now.
Yes, good job. That and putting out there, we are a family. That it's my job not just to worry about you, but it's to worry about you and you and you and you and all of us together. That what is best for the whole. And those are some of the conversations we have when like our oldest wants to do all these billions of things and we have to be like, no. Because we have to go to bed. At some point, sleep must happen for everyone else in the family. We won't come see all of your shows. We will come see one of them.
So I think this is another great question you should write down that we can have our panel talk about on week 4. Because again, this is a great example. These sibling dynamics and yes. So any more questions that should be written down? Because week 4 is going to be a lot of fun with our Q&A time.
And if you have more, you can, I'm sure, get a hold of us somehow.
I'm here most days. Well, we got a little over tonight. Thank you for your time.
I would read that and see if I worded it.
I got it. I know what you're trying to ask. So we're going to wrap up.
I had a lazy sibling too. It's fine.
Yeah, we were 5 years apart, so, I mean, it was a big gap. And, like, maybe that's where some of the laziness, I thought,
Right.
came in, where it's like I wasn't actually quite capable of some of
Right?
the things.
Yep.
Maybe sometimes.
It didn't change how I felt in the moment.
Yes.
So.
And that's where that's really like a lot of our job is like the gutters is really sometimes just explaining.
We had
Like-
Do I understand that you're feeling this way, but
I would feel this way too.
We
and
give you
if
some
they-
perspective.
Yeah, like, but
so we had
understand.
this with our second daughter and her directly next sibling. Why doesn't he have to do dishes? Well, he can't reach the sink.
Yeah, like, dude can't reach it. Like, I'm sorry.
Like, well, how come? Because darling, you have to step on a stool to get to the cat. Like, no, he's not
We're
big
doing
enough
good
yet.
for you to be able to do it. Like,
Right. And that was 2 years ago. And now he's at the point where he can reach the sink now. And so guess what he's starting to do this week? Unload the dishwasher.
guess who hates unloading the dishwasher too?
He does. So, guys, thank you all. We've gone a little over. See you next week.